Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Livengood. I'm the director of the Story Center at Mid-Continent Public Library. And welcome to the third panel for our local author fair. We're here with Mel Carney, Darlene Deluca, Anola Pickett, and Angela Yuriko Smith. So welcome all. How are you today?
Good.
Hello.
Excited to be here.
Great. Thanks for being here this afternoon, and we look forward to hearing about your books and your writing and having a conversation with you about local author fair and all things writing related and your work. So welcome.
Thank you.
I think a great place to start is just to introduce yourselves so that we can hear more about your work and the book you're here with. So, Mel, would you like to start us off, please?
Yes, my Command to Dawn is a personal story, and it takes the reader from my first day in the military, in the Army, back in 1966, through all my training, good and funny stories, and also the amount of work you put in training to learn how to be a combat soldier, and then time in Vietnam. All the training that I received from the military and 17 years on my dad's farm made me ready for a single night in Vietnam, which I'd spent 7 months there, by the way, in the field. Before that one night was over, I would have plumbed the very depths of my character and everything that I've ever been taught.
Sounds like Mel's mic has cut out a little bit.
Oh, is that better? Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, before that one night was over, I had plumbed the depths.
Right.
Okay, of my
Mel, we're having a little trouble hearing you. Let's we'll hold on to that real quick, and we'll hear from Darlene, and then we'll circle back.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yes.
Okay, you ready for me?
All right, Darlene.
Okay. So I write women's fiction and contemporary romance. The romance is more on what we call the sweet side. And so my books are all very character, relationship based.
Sounds like there's...
Can you hear me okay? So I started my writing career as a newspaper reporter. I have a degree in journalism. Worked for 21 years at Hallmark.
We're having a little trouble there too.
Oh. Is it the volume or what's the problem?
Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, we got it just fine.
I can hear everybody so far.
Okay.
I can hear everybody.
Having...
Do you want me to keep going?
Not to put you on the spot, Darlene, but
You all can hear, okay.
Okay.
yeah.
With just a couple other little points, I just wanted to mention that I am a hybrid author. I have my earlier books are independently published through Amazon.
Let me check. Hold on. All right, Darlene, continue. We're going to figure this out. I'm glad. Thank you, everybody, for your texts you're sending. I can hear everyone. Excellent.
Okay.
Go ahead, Darlene, please.
So just last thing is I just wanted to show my new release is published by the Wild Rose Press, and I now have 8 books published, some of which are at the library, and I'm still waiting for this one to hit the shelves.
Go ahead.
I think that's it, unless you want to know something else. That's my writing.
That's awesome.
All right, now I'm back.
All right.
You missed the whole thing then, huh?
I'll catch up. Thank you. All right. Who's up next?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear Darlene. And
Testing.
all right. Go on. You're good to go.
Okay, I get. No, first of all, Command to Dawn, which is a personal story that takes the reader from my first day in the Army through months of training and ending up in the combat in Vietnam. All the training that I received in the military for many, many years, many, many months, and for 17 years on my dad's farm got put to the test. Was tested one night in Vietnam. Before that night was over, I plumbed the depths of my character and upbringing, and in order to walk my company off the top of the mountain, 2 kilometers from Laos, I had to go deep into my soul and touch the very roots of my life. I share my story to encourage other veterans to tell their family their stories. If they do not, then an important piece of their family is lost to posterity. And this is my book, which is called Command at Dawn.
Great. Thank you, Mel. I'm sorry, Darlene. I missed yours.
That's okay.
We all heard it. That's what's important.
Yeah, everybody else got it.
Did you get a chance to say what you wanted to say then?
Yes.
All right, great. So I think we're on to Anola, right?
Okay.
Excellent.
Can you
Thank
hear
you.
me?
I
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay. I think everybody was hearing everybody except you weren't hearing us. Anyway. Well, I'm a former teacher and school librarian, and so I write basically for kids and for their families. The book that I've written, this book, where can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
It's the second book in a series of books about the Callahan family who lived in Kansas. This is fiction. Who lived in Kansas City during World War I. The first one, Callahan Crossroads, is about life on the home front during the war. Callahan Crisis is about the flu epidemic. And just a little side note, the publisher who did Callahan Crossroads and my 2 earlier historical fiction for kids decided they didn't want to do it anymore because they were too hard to market. So they turned down Callahan Crisis, which now, of course, is very timely.
It is.
So I published it with Amazon. And a lot of it comes from stories my mother told me because she was 6 and 7 during that time. So that's my story about Callahan Crossroads.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. Angela?
I'm ready. It's interesting. I also come from a newspaper background. I did 20 years of freelance and stringer work, and then I got with a paper for a while. So that's where my background comes from. I'm also a poet and a publisher, and we publish Space and Time magazine with my husband, Ryan Ozzie Smith. We haven't been doing that since 1966. I'm not even born then, which is yay. I like saying something's older than me now. But the magazine has been around since 1966, and we've had it for 3 years now. My first collection of poetry was nominated for a Elgin Award in 2017, and the book that I've just published, I actually just published 2 in October, is Sweet and Sour, which is the second book to Bittersweets, which is the one that I got the Bram Stoker finalist for in 2018. And then I did a poetry book, which is Altars and Oubliettes. It's interesting to try to get the lighting, glare, and in the camera at the same time. So we did those 2, and mostly what we wind up doing is, or what I wind up doing, the magazine is science fiction and horror and fantasy. I write a lot of horror, but I am just now doing my first romance because it's a challenge, and I have been genre biased, and I repent for my genre bias by writing one, and it's really fun. I think I'm having more fun with this book, and it's a supernatural romance. It's a paranormal, I guess is the word, not a sweet one. But yeah, I might say I'm coming over to the dark side because there really are cookies over there.
I thought we might touch on that at some point today.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but that's me.
Great. Well, welcome all again, and I'm glad we got everything straightened out. And so we have some questions, and then we also have happy to take questions from the audience watching. And if the audience has questions, I encourage them to write them in the chat, and we'll make sure the authors get a chance to address them. And one of the questions I'm interested in is about your writing process. And what's that like for each of you? And then also, how has that process changed during this new time that we find ourselves in? Has it impacted your creativity? Have you found it more difficult to write? Have you found it easier to write? How has it changed?
Should I?
Sure, Mel. Why don't you start us off?
Okay. From my standpoint, my writing process has been fairly locked in for a long time. Every day I write every evening, and I write in my study, which is filled with some mementos, pictures, and some 500 albums that they now call vinyl. Each evening I go down, I select the items, the albums I want to place them on the stereo, complete with wooden speakers. I light my writing lamp and begin to work on today's project. Oftentimes I pay no attention to the music, and after a while I've been writing for 3 or 4 hours. I refer to my writing time as the torch hour, and that's named after a show on WGN back in the 1960s. When Franklin McCormick hosted the Torch Hour. He played classical, he played modern, but he would actually take a song and he would actually do the words along with an orchestra behind him. And he really gave me, I think, a real appreciation for the written word, music, and telling stories. And so that's what's really about. So that kind of got my process going. And I write, like I said, every night exactly the same way.
All right.
Do you want me to go next?
You bet.
Okay. Well, I have to say I'm not nearly that organized. I'm what we call a pantser, and so my process is a little scattered. I usually just come up with it. I have an idea that's mulling around in my head, but the words really don't come unless I'm sitting at the keyboard. And that's how I don't do an outline for each chapter like a lot of people do. I usually have the beginning and the ending in my head, and then I just got to sit down and see how it all comes out. As for how it's changed, if it's changed, it has definitely changed. I am finding it much more difficult to concentrate and focus. I've got my husband home because he doesn't have much work right now. My son has moved back home, so they're working from home, and I'm used to having quiet. This is, my space during the day, and that has changed. And so I just kind of, I write when the words are coming, whatever time, that happens to be. I don't have a set schedule right now.
Yeah, I remember the short story. I was thinking about this morning. The short story writer Raymond Carver was once asked why he doesn't write novels, and he said he just didn't have the time to write novels. So he was really, because of the circumstances of his life, he was really focusing on short stories, and turned out an incredible batch of short stories, a collection during his lifetime. So he was definitely responding in certain circumstances in his life. Anola, how about you?
Okay, well, I can identify with Raymond Carver because I spent many, many years teaching full time. And so I wrote anything, short stories, poetry, articles. I even wrote for Confession magazine, just because I just had to keep writing. So, but I had to squeeze it in. After I retired from the classroom, the first thing that happened is a friend of a friend told me a story about his grandmother in 1889, and it just caught my attention, and I started researching. It took place in the mountains in Utah. And then I became a little more organized about writing, usually in the morning. doing research,
Mhm.
either online or going to places like the Genealogy Center, which is a wonderful place for any period of time, any place in the country. Not just, I always thought it was just for Kansas City, but it's not. So I kind of got into a rhythm of writing a chapter a day or maybe in 2 days. And then I would go to a coffee shop and read the hard copy and revise, and then go back the next day and put the revisions in and then move forward. But as Darlene was saying, that all went out the window.
Yeah.
And I just write when I can.
Mhm.
But I also have 2 grandchildren in Singapore.
Oh.
My son is a journalist with Reuters.
Oh, cool.
And I write stories for them a lot too.
Oh.
So I'm kind of all over the place.
Mhm.
But I always have been. So.
Angela, thoughts on process for you?
Yeah. Actually, I've always been what I consider a chaotic writer. And basically, if I'm not doing anything else, I'm writing. And it's for all sorts of things. It's either my blog or an actual book project, or when I worked in the newspapers, it was newspaper just pretty much anything, guest posts. If you ask me to write it, I will write it. I've actually done copy for the back of popcorn packages, because popcorn's interesting. I've never written that before. So not much has changed for my process as to that. And it kind of depends on the project, how sometimes I have music, sometimes I don't, it's just kind of when I can squeeze in there and get the words done. I've written on my phone. I have a couple chapters we're solely on my phone and a lot of editing afterward, but I got them down that way, sitting in a parking lot somewhere. And so that's pretty much my writing process. Is no process, just process it, just process it out. But I did notice with this 2020, when we all got sent home and we're all supposed to, be quarantined, my first thought, my schedule just cleared. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get so much writing done. And then I wrote not a thing for probably 2 or 3 months, other than a little poetry. I don't think I even blogged. Just nothing. No words would come out. And I noticed that it seemed like a lot of us, I have a bunch of writer friends, and we either hit it in 2 ways. We either processed on paper and just churned out a ton of work, or we did none of it. And at first I was kind of beating myself up, like, why am I not writing? This is my golden opportunity. I have no plans. Like, I can't do anything if I wanted to. But I'm not writing. I'm not taking advantage of that. And I think it's just finally what I told myself is it's okay to process too. Right now I am processing because we have never been here before. This is a whole new world. For a horror writer, wow, this is like what we've been writing about. It happened. We shouldn't have been so harsh. We could have all been nicer. But so now I'm out of the processing, and it seems like, I think about September, I kind of woke up and I was ready to get back to it. And then I published a book for somebody else that I edited, and then I edited somebody else's book and he published, and then I put out my poetry and I'd already written these things. I just hadn't actually got around to publishing them. And then the magazine. And then at the end of October, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. You know what? I'll do NaNoWriMo. Oh, and a romance. That's a good idea, because I've never done that and I need more challenge in my life. So that's the chaotic part of my writing process, is like, oh, I've never done that. That sounds really incredibly difficult. I'm going to try it and then gripe about it later. What's wrong with me? Probably need counseling. I have already accepted I probably have some kind of mental thing going on, but it's working so far.
Well, we just got a question from Ronaldo, Angela, and the question is, where can I find Space and Time magazine?
Oh, spaceandtime.net.
Spaceandtime.net. Are you accepting submissions for this?
We are actually, let me look at my calendar. We will be accepting submissions again because we just closed and we're coming out with our next issue. 19th of December. We will be accepting submissions for number 140.
That's the deadline?
That's just when to submit. And
When
the submissions only stay open for 2 weeks. And we have a submission manager. And I will say, I will put on my publisher hat and say, please use shun formatting. Please don't send me something that has not been run through spell check and is not formatted properly. Please put your address, your contact information on your piece when you submit it. Everybody, please.
We all know how important that is.
Yes.
And then where can Ronaldo find your blog?
Oh, Angela, it's my name, AngelaYurikoSmith.com.
Okay, Angela Y. Smith?
Well, it's Angela Y. Smith and Angela Yuriko Smith. I actually own both.
All right. Good deal.
Oh, good questions. I like those questions.
All right, the questions coming. We like them. And I have a question too. We talked a little bit about process, and the next question is really about publishing and about the different models of publishing. And your experience with different models could be traditional publishing, self-publishing, hybrid. Not only for the book that's you're featuring today, but also other projects you might be working on and how you go about making those decisions and about how to publish and how to get your work out there. Darlene, you want to kick us off for that?
Sure. So I started out by self-publishing because I think I got a little bit of misinformation from a successful writer about how easy it was. It is easy to publish, but it is not so easy to reach your targeted audience. So along with the whole publishing aspect of it, you really have to think about who you're reaching, how you're going to reach them, how you're going to market to them. Because when you do, actually, whether you do traditional or self-publishing, there's a lot of marketing. There's a lot of other pieces to other than just writing the book. But I went with self-publishing at first to just kind of, get my foot in the water and figure it all out. If you're successful, you can make a lot more money through self-publishing because the royalties are much higher. The other advantage is you have more control over your finished product. You can decide the title, the cover, the artwork, all of those things. I decided to go ahead and try querying agents and editors, publishers with my new book, simply because I didn't feel like I was getting the traction that I wanted from my other books. I just wasn't reaching a broad enough audience. So I wrote the book. I probably spent a year querying, editing, sending stuff back and forth. Then I was contracted with Wild Rose Press. And then, when you're working with a publisher, you're on their schedule and their timeline. So it took almost another year to get the book finished. So the process is much longer if you're going with a traditional publisher. If you want to get something out quickly, self-publishing is a much faster way to go. This book just came out in August, and so I'm still sort of in the get the word out phase and working on the release. So I can't really tell yet whether having the publisher, the backing of the publisher, is making a huge difference or not. I don't have all those details.
Right. Thank you. Other experiences?
Well, I kind of went the other way. Several years ago, my first published book was a chapter book with HarperCollins. And they did all kinds of marketing. And I thought, I'm set. But that didn't work out. The editor I had and worked with very well decided to have children instead. I can't fault her for that. Then I did my historical novels with an independent publisher, but they didn't do a whole lot of marketing. But the books did fairly well, so I've got 3 of those. this one, as I said earlier, I couldn't get the pub. I'm never sure where to hold things. There. I couldn't get the publisher who had done the first three to publish any more historicals for kids. So I decided to self-publish this because I thought it was timely. And this was before I knew we were going to have another pandemic. But I'm a terrible marketer. So I don't think this book has gone very far. Mm-hmm. And then I have another story. This is a picture book that just came out with an independent publisher. And it's about the prairie blooming in the springtime. And it came out, and I had all these signs set up across Kansas and a book walk at an arboretum. I mean, it was unfolding. And then the pandemic hit. Yeah. And that was that. Mm-hmm. So those are
it's too bad we haven't been able to get out and meet and greet with readers this year.
Yeah. Right. So that's my story. And I'm stuck with it.
Thank you. Bill, how about you?
Well, I started my first experience in publishing, kind of came through the back door, and I self-published this book, which is, if I can get it lined up there, which is Tomorrow's Road Home.
Uh-huh. And
I self-published that using the Book Locker. And because I didn't know anything about publishing. I mean, I'm talking about zero. And fortunately, I found a young lady in Colette that helped me from the editing side. But when I went out for Command at Dawn, there was a few things I wanted. One thing I wanted was worldwide distribution. That was number one. Number two, I wanted to be available in all markets, including all of Ingram's, all their customers. I wanted print on demand, a book on my publisher's website. I also wanted the book to be available in Kindle. In my search, I found Bob Babcock at Deeds Publishing down in Athens, Georgia. And he, like me, had been a Vietnam veteran. He was a platoon leader like myself. He specializes in military books and is an author himself. He is a great resource for me for ensuring that the military accuracy and the readability by both veterans and non-veterans. He helped me build my website, and then he introduced me to a reviewer recently to the AmeriCal Division, which I was a member of AmeriCal Division in Vietnam. And so I have a review coming out for my book in the AmeriCal Veterans newspaper magazine, which is a quarterly book that's coming out in January. So those are some of the things that I wanted, and I was able to get them all through. So it's not traditional, so it's sort of a hybrid of the self-publishing. But self-publishing is, I will just encourage everybody to go for it. I mean, if you're just afraid of it, go for it. They have, I use Book Locker, and I was able to choose my my cover. They get, and then I choose the pictures, and they work with me. And so while it's, if I were to do it today, I would do it better. But the fact is, it's published, and that's important. And you get that step. For in a lot of cases, I kind of felt like that movie where Harrison Ford was stepped off that ledge and onto the invisible rock. Well, when you're doing the publishing, there's no invisible rock. You just step off, and so you just you step off into the abyss. And don't be afraid of it. It's just it's worth a shot. Spend $1,000. It's not going to hurt your life. Get your book out there. That's really important. And then the other thing I've done is, I also did a one on the espresso machine at the library, and it's on Wings of Imagination. And David Burns worked with me, and that's like my first really self-publish. I'm talking about, I did it myself. We ran it. We started off with 10 copies. But again, it's a way of getting, that espresso machine is excellent. I mean, it's a wonderful device. And if you're afraid of going out and doing self-publishing any other way, use David. Use the library up there. They're fantastic, and they really help you like crazy.
Thank you. I'm going to post the link to information about the espresso book machine right now, in case people want to learn more about it. That's a service of the Story Center, by the way, just so folks know. And I just posted the link. As Mel was saying, I'm glad you had a good experience with this, and that's a service of the Story Center, and we invite you to check it out. And if you have any questions, contact Dave Burns about that. So, Angela, how about any thoughts on publishing?
Oh, many thoughts. Don't even get me started. So I'll try to leave room for everybody else. Now, I love publishing. Oh, and going back to the espresso machine, though, I'm actually getting ready to publish the Altars and Oubliettes as a regional with local photography and stuff version of that for our community, for our photographers and stuff, to try to do like a local version. But yeah, going to publishing, I started back when self-publishing first came out, and it wasn't KDP, it was CreateSpace on Amazon, and it was 2011. And I went, hot diggity dog, I can do everything myself? That's awesome. And then I don't have to pay greedy publishers, of which I am now one, and boy, we really don't get anything. I don't know what we're greedy about, because there's like nothing in the pot. But it was a lot of fun. My first mistake was, looking at my computer and going, 12-point font times Roman. That's a terrible font. I can barely see that. I'll go with like 19 because, that way everybody can see it. And then I got a large print book on accident. So in the years since, it's been a lot of learning. Because I had a chance to learn graphics through the newspaper after our graphic artist quit. That was a big benefit, because now I can do graphics myself, and I can put them in the books, not the magazine, and the magazine myself. And I love every publication, book or whatever. I love it because it's like its own piece of art. The writing is a piece of art, but the imagery and how it's all put together, and even the fonts and how it's laid out and where you put your page numbers, all of that is also super exciting and a piece of art. So I think the little control freak in me that tries to pretend it's not there, but it really is, loves the self-publishing because of that. After I did Bittersweets, it was kind of a turning point in my career, because all of a sudden Bram Stoker, wow, that's amazing. And I had offers to publish it, to publish the sequels as a new book from publishers. And I did a lot of wrestling, and I was going to do that. And I have had a traditional publisher once for a book called Mr. Bonejangles that you'll never see, because, that publisher is not available anymore. And I just ultimately decided to go with self-publishing again and stick with it. A, I get to feed my control freak. B, we don't make a lot doing this anyway. So, 70 cents as opposed to 30 is pretty good. And, and just the control, I think, it's, if you go traditional publishing, and I'm not trying to diss traditional publishers at all, because God knows we need them, but you have to do everything on their time schedule. Your cover may not be your vision for what the book was. Everything is dictated to sales. The length of the book is sales. The page numbers, it has to be 80,000 versus 50 because of the marketability of it. Things like that, which we do have to pay attention to as self-publishers, because we wear all the hats if we're doing it ourselves. But there's also a lot of gratification, because if it works, we wear all the hats and we can take all the credit, except for our families, because we have to thank them because they're letting us do this.
So we have a question that came from Nancy. What graphic software do you use, Anola?
Oh, me? It's a combination of Photoshop for images. Also, I can't remember it. There's a free one. Oh, GIMP. GIMP is also really good. And I'm told GIMP works a lot like Photoshop, but I use Photoshop. And then for the actual layout, I use Quark, which is a newspaper kind of program. There's also, InDesign. InDesign's the other main one that people use. But recently I found out that ebooks you can do on Google Docs, and they keep track of everything for you. So you do a certain kind of a headline in your chapters. They build the TOC or the table of contents for you and make it seamless. And then you can download it right there off your Google Docs for free. So, and ebooks are huge right now. I mean, that's, hey, we're all stuck at home. Nobody can have germy paper.
All right. So, and by additional questions that the audience might have, just please enter them in the comments and we'll pass them along to the panelists. And do any of you have any questions that you want to ask your colleagues, your fellow writers here?
My number one question is always about marketing. What tools do you use? What sites? What is there one thing that you have found to be the most successful for getting out there and reaching readers?
I have no answer because that was
darn.
I think for myself, I've been, until COVID, I was doing a lot of presentations to a lot of different groups around the city. Since with what COVID has done to us, I really have moved over into Zoom. And I start looking for places just like today, getting into authors groups. I also work with Kansas City veteran writers, and they have that gives me another outlet. And they work with Missouri Humanities, which gives you another outlet. I mean, it's just one outlet after another one.
Yeah, you have a nice little niche to call on. To help promote, yeah. Right,
and probably the biggest thing, I mean, it still comes back, like in self-publishing, it just comes back to you, and you just have to keep going out and looking and looking and looking. I have I've got a piece I send out to librarians, on my piece, from across the country. And just to try to get involved with them and let them understand that I have an offering, and it works for veterans and non-veterans and does very well.
All right. Angela?
Yeah, is the feedback? My phone is very low right now, so I'm going to experiment with plugging it in. Is this okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. I didn't want to die mid-sentence. As far as marketing is concerned, this is also one of my besides publishing and writing in general, marketing is my other favorite topic. My second book was the No Money Marketing, about how we can market ourselves using Facebook and everything for no money, for no outlet. And my goal as a cheap person is to always see if I can do everything really, really well without spending any money. And so far, I think I've done pretty good. But the blog, to me, is the almighty, like, you have to have that blog because everything kind of goes through there. And then from there, you've got it going to Instagram automatically, Facebook, Twitter, because, we all have to be everywhere. I haven't done TikTok yet, but that's something apparently I need to go on to. But I think the marketing is the consistency. Doing the same thing. So like I blog every day, unless we're having a pandemic and I freeze up and I can't communicate anymore. But otherwise I blog every day, and it doesn't have to be buy my book, which is actually bad. But anything that lets the readers know, or the audience and the people that we want to read us, know who I am as a person. I have dogs. Sometimes they interrupt my writing. So there's the writer connection. So I can do a whole thing about, I don't have writer's block. I have a writer's chihuahua. And he likes to get right in my arms and stop all progress, especially if I get a good idea and I go, oh, that's when he knows to come and harass me for pets and hugs, and which gives me a lot of time to think about it. But that's doing that and setting yourself up with that kind of a situation where it's the consistency is the best possible thing we can do. And there's no excuses not for marketing anymore other than we hate it, because everything is right here. I mean, we're actually getting ready to do a Twitch channel. I am not a technical cool person, but I have kids. And so I was told to do a Twitch channel, and my first response is like, what? Isn't that for gamers? But apparently art is one of the #1 trending things. People want to hear us writers and artists, and we consider boring people, compared to gamers, they're cool. They want to hear us boring people talk about creative process, and things that we think of as like mundane is exciting to other people who are trying to break into it. So the Twitch channel, you literally sit there and you have a conversation, and that is a big thing. And yes, I'm still mystified. You can see the mystification all over my face. I'm like, really? People just want to hear you talk about writing for an hour? That's it. But apparently it's huge. So when we do that, though, that's a major marketing thing, because you're building that audience, you're making those connections. And really, that's what it's all about, is just making the connections. Whether you're in person, at the book signings, you're making that connection. But now, because we have the online thing, we are limitless. We are just, the world is our oyster. Everybody's trapped at home, guys. All they can do is be interested in what we're doing. This is so exciting. There's no place else to go.
Yeah. So it sounds like that theme of consistency and discipline applies not only to marketing, but also to writing, as Mel was saying earlier. You write every day, and maybe you market every day too, something like that.
You have to.
Yeah. So Darlene, how about what works for you then in marketing? What have you found with your particular audience?
I feel like I've tried it all. And then, as Angela says, okay, here comes something else. Now we got to go figure out TikTok. It's like, so I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, Goodreads. I have a website with a blog, of course. I try to blog every couple of weeks. Right now, I'm actually doing a series on women in business to try to just kind of get some new content onto my blog that's not just me and my books. And that's kind of fun. That brings in some new people. And I've tried, I do marketing. I do a little bit of advertising. Just try a little bit of everything.
How do you get to know more about your audience?
Well, I learn a lot from social media, honestly, and libraries. I have a couple of writers groups that I'm in, but I would say I mostly find readers through social media. Goodreads is a good one. Facebook. The good thing about Facebook is you can kind of drill down into specific groups. There are women's fiction groups. There are, women writers groups. There are all kinds, the whole spread of different genres within romance. You can find groups for just about anything. So, there are ways. You just have to work at it a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So we've had a number of questions that have come in while we've been talking about marketing. And Kathy writes that marketing is a three-legged stool. There's permission, email list on a website, content, and influencers. You must have all three. I've been learning a lot from Derek Dopker and Tim Grawl, still learning and implementing their suggestions. And we had a couple of other types of questions circling back to what we were talking about with software. And one is from Ronaldo, a couple of questions. Tell me more about Google Docs. And then, does anyone use voice recognition software to write ever?
I haven't used it, but when I finish another novel, I'm going to, because I do try to read out loud, because you can really hear where you skip, where you stumble, where things happen. And so I think the technology has gotten better. Like, I'm just playing on Microsoft Word, where you can have it read your stuff back to you. And I think that is really a valuable tool for a writer to be able to hear the words.
Yeah, on Command to Dawn, I probably had the voice read my book back to me about 5 times. The inflection is not what it's supposed to be, but it's just not hearing yourself.
Yeah.
Because you could put "we was" in there, and you think it was all right because it was supposed to be "we were." But with having the voice recognition, I found that it's a very, very useful tool, and and I just use the free version off of Word, and
Okay.
I'm sure that the ones you buy is probably better. I don't know.
All right.
I haven't tried that.
Okay. Do you read your work out loud to yourself, Anola?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what's the impact of that?
I do it so I can hear the dialogue, so that it sounds natural. And with the picture book, I look for the rhythm and the flow of the word.
Does your picture book rhyme? Is it a rhyming book?
No.
All right.
Now, when I write for my grandchildren, I know the audience. I know the editors. It's so freeing. So I recommend it if you have grandchildren. Write stories for them. It's just wonderful.
Yeah.
And you don't have to market it because they already love you. I'm a terrible marketer. I'll confess to that. I just want to write.
I'm a terrible writer, but I really have a really good editor. I had a lady that really spent a lot of time with me to try to get me out of get me through my book, because at the rate that I was going, my book was going to be spinning around on my disk drive when they toted me off to Fort Leavenworth, for my last ride. So I have, I think really, one of the things with working with Bob Babcock was and Deeds was they really gave me permission to move forward, because this was a kind of a life book, if you will. And so that having that, and then having someone who will come in and work with you, the way Patrice worked with me, I was just very fortunate. It all fell together at one time, and so I'm glad that book is, as you can see behind me, it is where it is, just sitting on my shelf.
I have a question for Mel.
Yes.
Can we cross ask?
Yeah, sure.
Mel, was it difficult to revisit Vietnam?
Oh yes, I spent. Command at Dawn was finished 47 years after I got out of Vietnam, and I never could write about Vietnam. I could.
Yeah.
3/4 of my book is training, and all the stories from training, and they're funny, and they're hard. They're a lot of hard training, but it's fun. But the Vietnam side, I could not write. And it took a VA psychiatrist who cared. Dr. T just gave me, it got me to where I was able to talk. And then the thing that I really have kind of dedicated my book to is getting other veterans to talk to their families. And I know that, because a lot of guys just simply don't talk.
That's why I asked, because I know a lot of veterans won't talk about it at all.
Right, and that is sad. I understand it because I did it for 40-some years.
Yeah.
But the fact is, it lifted a tremendous weight off my shoulders. And I think if the veterans out there from any war, it doesn't make any difference which one, is able to talk to their family. And what I do in mine, and even in the book, I really try to fly about 100 feet above the action. Mm-hmm. So yes, there are some details, but they don't threaten you.
Yeah. And
so I can tell you a story about Vietnam, and I can give you a sampling and let you figure out the rest, or else I can go to be a bone crusher and take you right down to the nits and grits. I don't do that.
Yeah.
So it was really a big, that was, I did that purposely. I did it because first of all, it had been 47 years. So in actuality, the first 113 pages were written 47 years after it happened, because that's when I finally got to where I could write about Vietnam. But the rest of it is, I mean, there's a lot of really fun stories in there about traveling across the country. The Army just gave me a chance to see the country. I have, they have a question on fun facts. I mean, I get to spend, several weekends and weeks in San Francisco during the hippy dippy generation. I was there in 1966, 65. And so I was given a chance to. I was like I felt like a social studies. I was an Iowa farm kid, watching people with hair down to their backside, and ignoring every rule of the world. So what I did was, I was able to write about that. I wrote, and that's why I've been writing like that for years, but I never could write about Vietnam. And finally, a couple of years.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Good question. Thank you.
So Teresa emailed or posted a question. Who is your favorite character you've created?
Whoa, that's tough.
I know mine. It's a girl named Trimmy.
Trimmy?
Trimmy.
Or
Primrose. She lived on the outer banks of North Carolina, and her father and brother were lifesavers, which was the precursors to the Coast Guard. And that's what she wanted to do. But guess what? She was a girl. But she figured out something else. She was just a gutsy little girl, and she's in Whisper Island. Her name was Primrose Estella, which she hated. But she had a lot of guts.
Mm-hmm. Angela, favorite character?
My favorite character is whatever I'm working on at the moment. And that's always my favorite book. And then after it's published, I kind of forget about it. But right now it is a 6-foot-tall blue demon because it is a supernatural horror. Romance. I have to get into the other genre. I actually did a romance. And and he's Australian, and he's funny, not scary, but it's given me a lot of opportunity to do humor, which also I've worked a lot of humor, dark humor into my work. But now I'm doing like romantic humor. There's like kissing involved, and it's nice. It's friendly. Nobody's died yet. I'm like 30,000 words and nobody has died, which is a huge record for me. Huge. So that's pretty much, for favorite character, it would be whatever I happen to be working on. So, and if I suddenly start speaking in a terrible Australian accent, it's because I'm thinking about Duncan and what would Duncan say right now?
How about you, Darlene?
Oh, this one is really tough. I will say that when I read reviews, I get comments on the hero in this one a lot. He's kind of a book boyfriend, as we would say in the industry. And I really like the female lead in this one as well. She's a hardworking person who kind of had a fall from grace and is fighting her way back. And so I like that. I will say that in the new one, several reviews are talking about connecting with the heroine in this one. And she's a really nice person. She's a children's book author who connects with a young fan, and kind of a sweet little relationship develops. And so, I like them all, honestly. I usually put a bad character, bad guy, bad person in each one just for some conflict, but my lead characters, I like them all.
Mel?
Well,
favorite character you've created?
Me, yeah, right. No, actually, what I did with Command at Dawn is when I started really putting it together, I knew the one thing I did not want to do was go back to Vietnam. So I sent Scott Ledbetter in my place. And so Scott is kind of my favorite person. You know, he's I guess he's you know, in my book I try to I kind of put the author about the reader on my shoulder. He's looking over, the readers can always look over my shoulder. And you know, and I did a lot of people to tell me that I can actually, they feel like they've been there. And so Scott was one of my favorite guys. He, you know, he got me out of a lot of the jams. And you know, I think that you know, in what I'm doing now is I'm doing a flight of imagination, which what I would do is whenever the topic got too heavy in Command at Dawn, I would write on my flight of imagination. And so I have two characters that I've kind of fallen in love with, and that's Orville and Wilbur, and they are birds, and they're learning how to fly. And you know, and so if you want to know how birds learn how to fly, you know, read the book. It'll be out soon. I mean, I'm working on it, but it's just fun. It's a fun book, and of course their friend Lindy, and you know, is also in there, and Amelia, and it's just a lot of fun. But the Orville and Wilbur are my favorite two guys. They're two kids trying to learn something that the adults don't know what's happening and why they're going through this. Mm-hmm. So that's my flight of imagination.
Right. So we're coming toward the end of our hour, and I know one of the questions that have come in is about any horror stories or pitfalls to avoid, and I want to expand that to think about any tips that you would have for people based on your experience. Could be, as Ronaldo writes, pitfalls to avoid or particular things to look out for that you could pass along to people who are working on their own projects.
I'll take that. The first thing is keep your backside in the chair and write. That's the biggest pitfall, because a lot of times, you know, every fiber in your body is trying to keep you away from your writing desk, and you just have to grit your teeth and go back in. And you know, we all know that from my writing style, you know, it's once that idea starts coming, then you can't stop the damn thing. It just, you know, it comes out. And I'm Irish, and I think it comes from my Irish soul. Mm-hmm. I think when it fills to the top and words start pouring out, you have to write it. And if you don't write it, that those unwritten words may hurt that part of the body that keeps track of keeps track of that kind of thing in your life. So it's you really just have to keep writing, and also, if you know, like you know, Angela can write anywhere. I can't. You know, I mean, I'll make ideas, but when I'm here in my study, this is where I can write, because I can look up at any time and see a picture that will take me somewhere 1,000 to a mile away or 10,000 miles away, mm-hmm. and you just can grab onto it, get rid of writer's block, and just keep on moving. But you got to keep your butt in your chair.
Right. Don't give up.
Don't give up. Don't give up.
And believe in your story. Nobody else can tell the story you want to tell.
Right. Exactly.
So believe in your story. Don't give up, and stay in a chair and keep working.
I would add, find some trusted other writers, not necessarily your best friend.
Probably not.
Make some connections with some writers, or join a writers group to get some really good critique and feedback on your writing, because you're gonna love it. Your best friend is probably going to love it. Your mom's going to love it, but you really need to work through being able to take critique honestly. You're going to have some thick skin. You probably, once you finally publish, you might have a couple of bad reviews. That happens to everyone. Not everyone's going to love your work, and you just have to accept that. but really try to get some honest feedback and work through that as you're writing.
Yeah, great. Angela?
I kind of have a blend of advice between Darlene and Anola. It's to stay true to yourself, but also you really have to take what other people say about it into account. Mm-hmm. And in my case, it was Bittersweets, which obviously did work pretty darn good. But I had taken it to a writer camp, and a very well-known writer who's, very well-known and respected, kind of said, you know what, that's a terrible idea. It's a science fiction. That's a terrible idea. Nobody would do that. Nobody would ever want to do that. And I thought, is he right? I mean, my beta readers are super excited about it. I would do it, and he said it in class. And a bunch of people were like, well, I would actually do that. So I kind of thought, I'm going to go for it. Okay, maybe it's a terrible idea, but it wouldn't be the worst idea I've ever had. But it worked really well. And he was wrong. And that's why I'm not saying his name. Yeah. I personally gloat, and I have a few messages to gloat over, and so I'm glad I didn't listen. But I've had other things where, like, my husband is my favorite critic, and he'll tell me, you've gone too far. Like, don't ease back on that. Like in this romance, I had a dream sequence as the horror writer in me. Got bored with all the kissing and the hugging, and so she had a dream where a mantis, ate part of her head off in the dream. He said, no, that doesn't go in a romance. You cannot put that in there. And so, I eased back. I took that out. It's really good scene, though. But yeah, then maybe I'll use that somewhere else. But yeah,
so it's for something else.
Yeah, exactly. It is that fine line of listening to what other people say about your work and taking it into account, but also staying true to your own ideas. And really, though, you can't go wrong. It's art. It may not be popular now, but 50 years from now, it may suddenly get its wind. I mean, we're all reading 1984 right now. That was popular then too, but 1984 has a resurgence of popularity. So,
well, this has been, so just to summarize the tips: be true to yourself, be true to your story, keep working, and find those people who are going to provide you that honest feedback, and know that it's all to help your work get better ultimately. That's great. Well, we've come to the end of our hour. I want to thank all of you for being here today.
Thank you. Thanks for the Story Center for doing this.
Yeah. I know.
Happy to. We'll do the author fair again next year in November. It's always in November. This is the 7th annual. Next year, obviously, will be the 8th annual, and we'll see what format we will be in.
It would be nice to meet you all in person.
I know.
And it could be back in person at Woodneath Library Center, but it could be a different possibility like this. But in any case, thank you all for being here. Good luck with your projects you're working on and future projects. And I'd like to thank also everybody who's joined us today and for your questions and your interest. And I'm going to send a link for an online survey. We like to get your feedback for the Story Center and for Mid-Continent Public Library about this program and about how we're doing. So if you could take a few minutes, that would be great. But thanks again, everybody, and good luck, and
thank you.
Stay in touch, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.